Monsieur le Vice-Président,
Mr. Vice President, distinguished colleagues, it is an honor for me to take the floor before you today on behalf of Canada and the Canadians. I'd like to underscore that I am meeting with you here on the traditional territory of the Lenape people. This recognition is important because today in Canada we are celebrating the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, during which we recognize and commemorate the Indigenous peoples who were here before us and continue to live among us. We recognize the pain caused by decades of abuse, negligence, and racism. Here as well, we would like to commit to doing better and to rectifying the errors of the past so we can move forward together.
is a country based on the rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our constitutional charter. A core reason Canada is a prosperous society is that beyond offering the freedom to pursue a better life for you and your family, it is also a way for us to provide freedom from the barriers that prevent you from enjoying a better life. Freedom from fear, violence, intimidation, and discrimination. Freedoms that foster a sense of inclusivity and belonging. Freedom that protects the vulnerable and builds stronger communities. Far too often, though, some of the loudest voices claiming to speak for freedom are the ones trying to redefine that word for their own purposes. They claim freedom as an excuse to do as they wish without any regard for the freedoms of others. This is certainly not how we should define freedom. They hide behind the word to tell us everything is broken, to spread disinformation and parrot the lines fed to them by those who wish to interfere in our elections and undermine our democracy. They weaponize the term freedom to further marginalize those in the most vulnerable situations, to justify spreading hate, and even deny people their right to make choices about their own bodies, including limits on reproductive rights. At the end of the day, through all of the noise, what they really mean to say is freedom for some, not freedom for all. Often, the people who claim to speak for freedom are the same people who want the government to decide who people can love, who they are, or even what they can wear. We see it in our country. We see it around the world. At the international level, we see it when groups or countries declare that international law doesn't apply to them. In Afghanistan, we see it taken to its extreme as the Taliban continue to impose inhumane rules against women and girls, banning them from being in public so they are invisible, robbing young girls of the fundamental right to an education. How is that respecting human dignity? How is that protecting the best interests of their people? They need to be held accountable. Last week, Canada joined Australia, Germany, and the Netherlands with the support from 22 other countries to take steps to hold Afghanistan accountable under the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. The Taliban cannot make international law disappear through simple decrees. Canada is a country that values freedom from oppression, not the freedom to others. There should be nothing controversial about protecting human rights, including the dignity of all men and all women alike. On Haiti, the world cannot sit idly by as people suffer. La violence des gangs et la corruption incontrôlée.
Gang violence and unchecked corruption in Haiti have created a disaster for the population, which has plunged into deep insecurity, with civilians being shot and children dying of hunger. Canada has always maintained that this crisis must be resolved by Haitians, for Haitians. Therefore, the Presidential Council for the Transition and the Government of Transition is striving to restore order, but they can't do so alone. The Haitian people needs a multinational support and security mission that works together with the Haitian National Police, not only to help the police restore order, but also to meet the population's basic needs. That is why Canada has invested more than $100 million to support that mission. It is doing its part. We must show the Haitian people that we will not abandon them. The UN Security Council must send a clear message to this effect, and I'd like to thank them for their decision today. I also would like to thank CARICOM and Kenya for the crucial role they are playing in the response to this crisis. Together, we can bring about lasting peace and stability in Haiti.
Mr. President, what is happening in the Middle East is an unspeakable tragedy. Thousands have been killed in Israel, in Gaza, and in Lebanon, including many Canadians. This is a senseless war that goes against the dignity of human beings. The suffering on all sides must end. What the world continues to witness is a repeated cycle of violence where civilians pay the heaviest price. Canada is joining those urging Israel and Hezbollah to accept an immediate ceasefire. We need to create space for peace talks and save lives. There cannot be war in Lebanon, full stop. UN Security Council resolutions must be respected. Families in southern Lebanon and families in northern Israel must be able to safely return to their homes. We have, and always will, insist that civilians be protected wherever they're from. Next week marks 1 year since the terrorist attacks by Hamas against Israel. And last March, I visited Kibbutz Kfar Aza, one of the communities attacked on October 7. I met Ayelet, a mother grieving her son who was brutally murdered in the attack, and he died protecting his fiancée. Ayelet recounted the terror of that day, the search for loved ones in burned homes. As she spoke about the horrors of October 7th, we heard the bombs as they landed in Gaza nearby and felt the ground shudder. In that moment, the duality of the tragedy befalling the Israeli and Palestinian people was profound, and it is a moment I will never forget. The situation in Gaza is inhumane. The level of suffering is unacceptable, and it must stop. Innocent Palestinians, women and children cannot pay the price of defeating Hamas. It must end. And a ceasefire is needed immediately. Hostages must be released. This requires both sides making real efforts. Mr. President, for lasting peace, Canada has long advocated for a two-state solution. We believe both Israelis and Palestinians have the right to exist. We all know a negotiated agreement is the best chance for Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in peace and security. Unfortunately, Hamas, a terrorist organization, continues to operate in Gaza, refuses to release hostages, and refuses to lay down its weapons. And meanwhile, the government of Israel is against the creation of a Palestinian state. Violence against Palestinians by extremist settlers and expansion of settlements by Israel in the West Bank continue unabated. And this is unacceptable. Canada supports the creation of a Palestinian state. That is why we are providing security and development support to Palestinians themselves. We will officially recognize the state of Palestine at the right time, when it is the most conducive to building a lasting peace, and not necessarily as the last step of a negotiated process. More than anything, this conflict has led to unspeakable pain. Communities are hurting. People have the right to protest peacefully, but nobody has the freedom to intimidate others. Polarization is a real problem, and division is real. We have a collective responsibility to bring people together. Mr. President, it's now been 2.5 years since Russia launched its illegal invasion of Ukraine. The human cost continues to grow. No country has the right and the freedom to invade its neighbor, and there's no freedom to impose your will on others. This aggression is a blatant violation of the UN Charter. Russia needs to get out of Ukraine now. And the Ukrainian people have the right to be free from fear and from aggression. They have the right to decide what their own future should be. And Mr. President, we all know that if Russia's aggression goes unchecked here, it will continue. Many countries in the region and the hemisphere are wondering if they will be next. And the world must not back down in denouncing this unjustifiable aggression, and Canada will not back down from its support for Ukraine. At the end of October, Canada will host a conference co-organized with Norway and Ukraine on the human dimension of Ukraine's 10-point peace formula. We will focus on the return of children to their families, as well as deported civilians and prisoners of war. Everyone, those affected by this war, is entitled to freedom from violence and from being forced from their home. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, the issues I've just spoken about have to do with massive challenges, and this institution has a key role to play to bring us toward solutions together. The UN's detractors accuse it of being unable to resolve the problems that the world is facing today. And worse, some, one might call them conspiracy theorists, even think that the UN is the cause of some of these problems. Both of these groups are ignorant of reality and the strength of this organization. The UN is a unique platform allowing us to come together and speak to each other on an equal footing, to try to reconcile our differences, sometimes profound, through discussion and through seeking consensus. And that is why Canada supported the adoption of the Pact for the Future during the Summit of the Future held last week. The Pact is a starting point, allowing us to work together to ensure the lasting place of this organization. The UN is not perfect, true, but progress is possible. As said by Secretary General, we simply cannot build a future for our grandchildren with a system built by our grandparents. So let us build that future together. Mr. Vice President, for almost 80 years now, no woman has occupied the post of Secretary General. That is unacceptable. Last week, I had the great honor, together with my colleague from Jamaica, to host in Toronto about 15 women ministers of foreign affairs from throughout the world. Our intention is clear. The next leader of this great institution must be a woman. It is high time for us to be able to say proudly from this podium and throughout the world, Madam Secretary General. And I will say the same thing for the post of President of the General Assembly. Mr. Vice President, with all due respect, which you inspire in me as well as the President, I hope that next year delegates will be speaking to a Madam President, and I think that many of us here today share that desire.